Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and these are the games leaving my collection in October. As usual, we're going to be going through a whole bunch of games, I think roughly 13 or 14 of these, and as usual, disclaimer that I go through a lot of games. The very nature of what I do, being a content creator, or in general, even before that, just generally liking to cycle games. I like to play a lot, try a lot, and the downside of that means since I don't like to collect a lot, I like to play the games I have, it also means games come in, games go out. Just take that into account because there are a lot of good games leaving at any given point, and don't read into it heavily past the fact that I'll be like, hey, this is a great game, and I prefer other games to it. In any case, oh, and then lastly down below, or two things lastly I should say, there's a link down below to a video of how to sell a game, because I've had people ask what I do with games when I get rid of them, and it's a little video of start to finish how to sell a game in case you're interested in checking that out for quick start to finish, US based taken into account, but I'm sure you can apply it to whatever local place you're in. And then secondly is some of these games I do give away over on Patreon. If you are a Patreon member, depending on what tier you are in, more or fewer games are available for giveaways over on Patreon. And with that, let's go ahead and start this off. Timestamps down below so you can jump to any relevant section as usual. Starting off the bat with two small box games. Bandida is going to be our first of those. Bandida is a cute little game. I do enjoy this, but I also find I don't pull it out and play. It's a game that plays 1 to 4 players officially, although theoretically speaking, you can distribute more cards to more players, but you're basically laying down cards in a bit of just a pattern on the table to try to create a network in which allows Bandida to escape or not to escape, depending on the goal that you're playing with. It teaches in 2 minutes, plays in like 25 to 35 minutes or so, somewhere in that range. Box says 15 minutes. I don't think I've ever played this game in well, and I guess you could sometimes. Either way, it's a fast-playing game, laying down cards. It's fun, it's simple, it's accessible, and I don't pull it off the shelf for myself. I find that it's the kind of game that I'm always happy to play and always enjoy it, but it's not one that I find myself compelled to suggest. From there, another small box game is The Game. Now, I do think the game is excellent, by the way. I really enjoy the game. The only problem is I enjoy Tranquility more. And that's something I said when I first played Tranquility. The very first time I played Tranquility, I was like, this feels like the game, but I prefer this one. The question was, would I continue to play the game or not? And time has shown that whenever I'm in the mood for one of these games, I continue to pull out Tranquility. I do recommend the game. I think it's great. I highly recommend it. I just recommend Tranquility more, and if you like Tranquility and you pick that up and you want to try something similar, try the game. You might prefer this one. I'm sure people prefer different games. That is how this hobby works. We all have different preferences and tastes, and the game is a fantastic game. So is Tranquility. I personally prefer Tranquility. Both are excellent. From there, we have Kim Joy's Magic Bakery. This is one that I never particularly loved. I was always okay with it. It's a cooperative game in which you're trying to collect ingredients and build different things. The game works overall. See, now I can't even say the game without thinking of the game. Not the game. We're done talking about the game. We're not going to mention the game any more times at all, probably. This game, not the game. This game works very well as far as being a complex game with a bunch of scenarios, things that mix up the experience. Overall, it's fun, it's simple, it's just not my go-to genre or theme, or, well, I mean, I like cooperative games. I found this to be a little more procedural as far as just grabbing cards. There is a degree of efficiency baked into the game, that's funny, that was not intended. There's a degree of efficiency baked into the way this game is designed, as far as how you have to manage the trading of resources to other players, to time your way around making the customers happy, and some customers you won't make happy. Overall, it works. It's just not something that I find sparks joy, and so it's one that eventually, the main reason I stuck around this long is my daughter likes it. Also, my daughter never, ever asks to play it, so, and she asks to play a lot of games. This just doesn't make the cut, even though she likes it. But anyways, moving on. Now we have, let's go ahead and talk about the one game I have not played on this list, which is Winterborne. Winterborne is a game that I've read the rules for, I don't know, 2 or 3 times now, prepping to play it, and for whatever reason, it just doesn't get tabled. This is from Talon Strike Studios, who have a few games under their belt. They have Vinyl, which I actually haven't played. They have The Night Market, which I really enjoy. They have a bunch of games under their belt, but I found Winterborne is one that I kept trying to play, and for some reason, it just didn't get tabled. The rules as well seem a bit non-intuitive as far as the game goes. It's the kind of thing that I think I would probably enjoy this, but I find that when I'm looking at all the games on my want-to-play shelf, the games that I'm looking at in terms of games I want to table or games that I haven't yet tabled and want to eventually try out, I find Winterborne just keeps shifting lower and lower even as I continue to get more games. That's why every single video or something like that, or most of these videos, there's usually like one game that I haven't played that I've given up on. Maybe it's every other video. More often than not, I play these games. But Winterborne for right now falls in the category of a game that I am unfortunately giving up on getting tabled, at least anytime soon. Not saying never, just saying it's time to move on for right now and find its way to somebody else's collection. In any case, moving on to 2 games that I recently reviewed, starting with Basilica. There's more games than 2, but these just happen to be on the top of the pile. Basilica. Basilica from Portal Games. This is a reprint of an older title, and it's totally fine and totally acceptable, and also not one I feel the need to keep. Basilica is a area control game for 2 players as you build out a cathedral, place your people, try to control things, use various abilities. The overall core puzzle of what Basilica is doing is solidly enjoyable. On my end, I'd rather play games like Land vs. Sea or Carcassonne, both games that I recommended in my review for Basilica. I think Basilica is totally fine. I think that I understand why anyone would enjoy it. I just think it's a good game. I think there are many good games, and for me, I have a softer spot for Carcassonne, and in terms of just pure competitive tightness, I think Land vs. Sea from Good Games Publishing has much higher degree of just strategic strategy. Strategic strategy, let's go with that as the term. Basilica's fun, not one I need to keep. Speaking of games that are fun but not that I need to keep, also 2-player only, we have the Rocketeer from Funko Games. The Rocketeer is one in which it's from the IP, although I've never watched the movie. I'm assuming it's a movie. Is it a TV show? I honestly don't know. Is it a book? I think it's a movie. Either way, it's a movie. Let's see. Dun 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 dun. Doesn't seem to specify. It's anywhere on the back here. Either way, this is Funko Distribution, Velunco. I don't know. Maybe is it a movie? Is it not a movie? I don't know. Anyways, The Rocketeer. The Rocketeer from Funko Games is a 2-player game as you vie for control of different areas, trying to achieve your goals of getting the most points from these finale cards you're trying to gather across the course of the game. I enjoyed the game. I thought the Rocketeer was solidly fun, but also in terms of 2-player head-to-head games, there are other experiences that I just prefer, and I didn't love the fighting mechanism in this game. The fighting mechanism is basically expending grit until eventually you just slap people down and knock them down again and again and again. There's a lot of things going on in the game. I did enjoy it. Happy to play it, but one that I'd rather play a game like Targi or a lot of other Seven Wonders Duel, I don't know. I mean, they're not directly comparable. I couldn't think, the whole time when I was trying to think, whenever I do videos, whenever I do reviews, I often try to think of what games would make good recommendations that feel similar. And I feel with The Rocketeer that there are like 50 games that weren't coming to mind as games that feel similar. So I did suggest like generic 2-player games that have a degree of blocking, like Targi and whatnot, but I don't know, I feel like there are other games that are similar to The Rocketeer that are not coming to mind, but overall, I very much enjoy The Rocketeer, but also not one that's going to make my 2-player best of cut. From there, we have a game that hasn't been played in a while, which is Fire Tower. Fire Tower is one that I covered, I don't know, maybe, I got this at Origins 2021. I want to say. I got a bunch of plays of it in, overall enjoyed it, had fun. The expansion I highly recommend. If you like Fire Tower, I think the expansion will take it to the next level for you, but it's one that over enough plays, I eventually got to a point where the game was simpler than I would like, and like I reviewed it a while ago, I don't remember exactly when, but it's one that the game itself is enjoyable. Like the production quality is off the chart. You're basically building out these fire in the woods. The board looks kind of but the gems look like fire spreading across the forest. The theme is ridiculous because you are people managing fire towers trying to move the fire towards your opponent, which is not how that actually works. You're trying to put out fires, whatever. The expansion works great. I love the little fire hawks moving fire around to location to location, but the actual game tends to feel a little bit more random. I find that as a 2-player game, there are other 2-player games I'd rather play, and as a 3 or 4-player game, it kind of feels like you're victim to whatever way the wind blows, which is not a pun, that's literally whatever way the wind blows, as well as the other players and how they play things. I think it's a game that is enjoyable to see it unfold, but strategically speaking isn't my favorite, and so eventually Fire Tower is one that I like it. Again, I like seeing the puzzle explore, I like seeing the puzzle unfold, I like seeing the fire spread across the board, I like those moments. It's one of those games that's casual fun, but ultimately I think I have too many games in the casual fun category, and other ones get picked more and more over Fire Tower as time has gone on. Solid game, ready to move on from it. Similarly speaking, we have Archravels. This is a game that wasn't for me ever, honestly. Not a bad game, not in the slightest, but it's way too light. Archravels is a game that for me is way too light. There's gateway, there's light, there's accessible. I find like for me, when I think of light games, I think of games like, that's not true. When I think of light games that I enjoy for myself, I think of games like Baron Park, like, I don't know, what else? Carcassonne is a great one. Just looking at my shelf down there. Las Vegas is a great one. There's a bunch of games in the light category that I find very solidly enjoyable while giving you enough interesting decisions to be something I really enjoy playing. I find a game like Archravels falls a little bit too light for me. I didn't find the decisions in Archravel or the tableau building or any areas of it to be compelling enough. Production quality, great. Theme, very unique. Solidly enjoyable for those looking for a very Gateway experience. But for me, there's Gateway Plus, and there's Gateway Minus. To me, Archravels is in the Gateway Minus category, and so for me, it's never one that I was ever going to keep on my own merits. That said, I kept this one because for a while my wife liked it and wanted to play it, but practically speaking, it does not get asked for. It's in that category of it's appealing, it's adorable, it's very cutesy, but not one that people actually ask to table. The nature of my house, my kids, my wife, all that stuff, the people who would play this game, we play a lot of games that are already leveled up a bit, so to speak, and this one just doesn't get requested. But Archravels is a fun little game. If you want, again, a gateway minus experience where you're just trying to collect various tokens and use those towards building out the various art and yarn projects you want. Theme is charming, game is accessible, solid recommendation for a light game if you're looking for a very light game. Another more recent review is Airmail. Airmail from Ludonova Games. Airmail is a game of building out routes. If you've played games like Ticket to Ride or Airlines Europe, not really as much Airlines Europe. If you play games like Ticket to Ride or Trekking the World, I guess, this has a degree of commonality with it, as you build out these little plane routes on your map. You're building out plane routes on the board, and you're basically trying to put down planes and create connections and deliver packages from location to location as you figure out the optimal way to improve your routes, score more points round to round, until eventually game end is triggered. It gives you an interesting puzzle that, over multiple games, does get more interesting at first, but then it starts to feel a little samey as the game goes on. Overall, I enjoyed this one. I just think I would probably prefer games like Ticket to Ride, or more specifically, there's actually a game coming up that I really enjoyed in this category. A game called Wanderlust. Wanderlust is a fun game that I'm going to shout out now, I guess, that it's an upcoming Kickstarter, I want to say in 2023, if I'm not mistaken. But Wanderlust, to me, I think is my personal favorite of the lighter but yet interesting route building games. Again, if you're comparing to things like Ticket to Ride, like Trekking the World, or like Airmail, and there's many games in this category, just three comparisons, I think Wanderlust I prefer from those. Then there's also Thurns and Taxis, which is leveling up a notch. That's a very good game. Have not played in a while, but Thurns and Taxis is absolutely fantastic. Anyways, another more recent review is Catan, Dawn of Humankind. Catan, Dawn of Humankind is one that I played, and I'd rather play Catan. That's the whole conversation. I reviewed this one. You can check out my review on the channel. It's basically Catan. It's a reprint of Catan Settlers of the Stone Ages, and now it's called Dawn of Humankind. And they tricked me with that one because I avoided Settlers of the Stone Ages for a long time, but I did not avoid Dawn of Humankind. And it's fine. It's a totally fine game. I think if you like Catan, there's enough here to like, but also for me, I prefer basic Catan. Catan Dawn of Humankind does one thing that's very nice over regular Catan, which is it gives you a degree of exploration on the board, as well as like these tech tracks, kind of. I say kind of because the tech tracks aren't that interesting, and the exploration part, while I do appreciate, doesn't actually give you a board that's different. The board is very static and the same every single time, which means I'd rather play Catan. Catan mixes up the tiles, the way the tiles are structured, the values of the tiles. Basic Catan mixes up the experience far more than Dawn of Humankind does, and so while I think Dawn of Humankind is totally fine and gives you a totally acceptable Catan experience, I'd rather play basic Catan from those two games. From there we have another review, a bunch of recent reviews coming out over here. We have The Hunger from Richard Garfield and Renegade Games. The Hunger is a deck building game where you are all vampires trying to figure out the most efficient way to wander down to the villages, to the forest, and to slowly eat all the people and then make your way back before sun rises and everyone goes poof in smoke and all that stuff. That's the basic idea. But literally that's what's happening over here. In The Hunger, what you're doing is you have beautiful art, by the way, designed by Richard Garfield, but you have the vampires, and you're building your deck, and you have a 3-hand deck every single turn. And that's part of the problem of the game as well, which is the game starts off very efficient with your vampire deck, but as you eat things, just like a regular meal, you become bloated and have a harder time of actually, eating the next thing as the game goes on, and so your deck becomes less and less efficient as you eat all these people. There are ways to weed the cards, but those things are inefficient, which means the Hunger, while it gave me fun powers and abilities and reasons to continue playing and different strategies as far as how much you push your luck and all that, what it did for me is it committed a grave sin, which is you, the player, got less efficient as the game went on. The longer the game went on, the less efficient you, the player, became, and that, to me, is just not something that I enjoy. I want my deck to get more powerful. I want my stuff to become better, and the only thing The Hunger really focused on heavily is, here's your deck, and now watch as you get worse and worse as the game progresses. Sure, you're getting points, but your engine is getting worse. I didn't love that. So I love the premise of The Hunger. I like deck building games in general. The art and strategy were all present, but I don't like games where I get less powerful as the game goes on. And that's what happened in The Hunger. And from there, we have two more over here. These last two are the hardest ones. These last two, I would say, from all of these, I mean, the game is possibly a hard choice. Depends how you look at it. I mean, it's small enough I should keep it, but whatever. I just don't play it. But the game is probably the one I like the most from all of these, because I really do enjoy the game. I just like Tranquility more. From there, Fire Tower, Basilica, Rocketeer, all solid games. I mean, honestly, like, different degrees of how much I want them or how much I want to keep them. These last two are the ones I most want to keep, but again, practically speaking, whenever I do these games leaving the collection videos, the practical reality is games are always coming in, which means unless I want this basement to flood over with too many games, games always have to leave as well. And to that end, we have the last two, which are the hard ones, although with caveats, which is one is Decorum. And if you're like, Alex, you love Decorum, you're not wrong. I did love Decorum. Also, I kept playing Decorum, and I've played Decorum enough that I'm ready to move on from it. Decorum is a game that comes with there's a 2 to 4 player mode, but I primarily played 2 players. I don't know if I've ever played it 4. I played it a few times with 3, and I played it primarily at 2 players as I go through the scenarios. Decorum from Floodgate Games is a game of communication, a game of trying to talk to each other, well, not actually talk to each other, you each have your goals as far as how you want to decorate the rooms, but then you're trying to not communicate, but just do things. So I move a green lamp in the room, and you're like, nope, I'm going to move that green lamp out. And so I know something's wrong, but I don't know what's wrong. Maybe you don't want lamps on that side of the building. Maybe you don't want green items on the top floor. Maybe you don't want more than 2 items in that specific room. There's any number of different things you might have as your goals. The problem is I don't know what your goals are. I just know that the green lamp made your goals worse, even though a green lamp might be fine. It might be that if I remove the yellow frame, I can put the green lamp in because now there's only 2 items in the room again. So I don't know necessarily what's going on, and you have to try to figure out a way of communicating as you go through scenario after scenario, improving your decisions and improving what you're able to see without talking. Because that's part of the game, is trying to figure out how to communicate without actually talking, what to move around, similar to Tranquility, similar to the game, similar to the mind. There's a degree of just figuring out other players' play styles and adjusting around that. I really recommend the game a lot. I think Decorum is fantastic. I just played through the scenarios and I'm ready to move on from it. It's the kind of game I could keep, but there's so many of these games that keep coming out that I really enjoyed my time with Decorum. I really recommend it. I think it's an excellent game, and I'm ready to move on from it. From there, and lastly, and I would say Decorum is actually probably the hardest one this list for me to get rid of. The last one probably should have been earlier. Lastly, we have Mission Catastrophe. Mission Catastrophe is... I take it back. Mission Catastrophe is the hardest one to get rid of. Because Decorum, I think is better than Mission... Not arguably. Decorum, I think, is better than Mission Catastrophe. No question at all. But the difference is Decorum I've played through and I'm ready to move on from. And Mission Catastrophe I have not played nearly enough, especially of the expansion content for the game. Mission Catastrophe from... what's it called? From... Oh my gosh. I'm blanking on the name. What's the name? Mission Catastrophe from Carbon Alchemy. From Carbon Alchemy. Mission Catastrophe from Carbon Alchemy is a game of semi-co-op, which is why ultimately it's leaving. Although it's more, depends how you look at this game. Mission Catastrophe has a few things going on as far as how the game progresses. The basic idea is your spaceship's going boom and things are falling apart and everything's going boom, 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 boom. And you have to work together with other players to keep the spaceship alive while trying to be the player who makes your way off the spaceship and the other players all go boom. So it has that semi-co-op element where you have to work together, but then ultimately one player is winning. And so overall, I find Mission Catastrophe is charming. It has amazing production quality. It has some really fun abilities and whatnot, and ways to try to just mess over the other players. And it's a game, whenever I play it, I have fun. Also, it plays generally best at 4+. I find at 3 I don't like it quite as much, and it plays best at 4+. And so the problem is, it's a game that has a semi-co-op element, that plays best with 4+ players, and practically speaking, games that play at 4+ are competing for such ridiculously good games in my collection, games that I vastly prefer. Every time I've played Mission Catastrophe, I've had a good time. Every single time. I've never played it and thought that wasn't fun. I've always played it and thought that was fun, that was enjoyable. There's laughs, there's amusement, everyone's having a good time. And if you have a group that goes 4 to 6 players, again, the game is playable 1 to 6 players, but I personally have found that, again, 3 feels a little bit looser than I'd like. So for me, it's a 4+ game, and I think that it's a game I can easily recommend if you consistently have 4+ players. My main game group is usually 3 or 4, and again, 4-player games, we have such competition for the games we really, really want to table, that ultimately Mission Catastrophe, because of the genre it's in, because it feels a bit more like a party game, but also requires enough strategy that's not fully a party game, just is fitting into a harder spot in my personal collection based on my game group and their dynamics. But this is definitely... And this is a great convention game too, by the way. If you're at a convention, you want a crazy fun time to play a game, Mission Catastrophe will really work for you. It's a ridiculously solid game, as many of these are in different ways. And that's it. These are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. These are the 13 games leaving my collection in October. November will have more. I already have a whole bunch of reviews lined up, and many of which are amazing games that I love and I'm keeping for right now, and others of which are games that I'm totally fine moving on from. Most games are good. The usual party line for all these videos is Most games are good, but some games are amazing for you, and other games are only good for you, and you should always keep the ones that are amazing for you, because there's too many games. There's too many games, never enough time. You should keep and play the best games. Unless you like collecting games, in which case, do what you want. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.